and kicks out his wife. 4 years later, she returns by private jet with triplets who look just like him. Tears streamed down Emily Harrison's face as she hurriedly threw clothes into a suitcase. Her husband's words still echoed like knives in her heart. "I want you out of this house in 15 minutes. I can't stand to look at your face anymore." Michael Harrison was blind with rage after finding the incriminating messages on his wife's phone. He refused to listen to explanations, ignored the desperation in her eyes when she tried to say it was all a misunderstanding. The messages were about a surprise party for his birthday, but his toxic jealousy twisted everything in his mind. "Michael, for God's sake, listen to me. It's not what you think," Emily begged, trying to grab his hands as he hurled her clothes out the bedroom window. "I don't want to hear your lies. I saw everything, Emily. Can't wait to see you. It'll be unforgettable. He won't suspect a thing." "Do you think I'm stupid?" roared the businessman, owner of the largest luxury car dealership network in New York City. Michael's usually gentle face, now twisted with hatred, was unrecognizable to Emily. In 6 years of marriage, she had never seen him like this. The situation worsened when Richard, Michael's father and president of the Harrison Group, entered the room, drawn by the shouting. "Guy, what's going on here?" asked the 68-year-old man, staring in confusion at the chaotic scene. "Turns out your perfect daughter-in-law has a lover," Michael snapped, throwing Emily's phone into his father's hands. "See for yourself." Richard took the phone with trembling hands as Emily, in tears, tried to explain. "Richard, please don't believe this. Those messages are about the surprise party I'm planning for Michael's birthday. It was supposed to be next week with all his friends." Her father-in-law's expression showed he believed her, but before he could intervene, a sharp pain shot through his chest. His knees buckled and he collapsed onto the bedroom's Persian. "Harasgatu, Dad!" Michael shouted, rushing to his side. Emily tried to approach, but her husband violently pushed her away. "Get out! Look what you've done!" he accused while dialing emergency services. At that moment, Emily realized nothing would ever be the same. Shaking, she grabbed her purse, the few clothes she had managed to gather, and her laptop. As she left, she paused at the bedroom door and watched her father-in-law being tended to by his son. A searing pain gripped her heart, not just from the unfair accusations, but from the secret she carried. She was 2 months pregnant, and not with just any baby, but with triplets. The rain poured mercilessly as Emily left the Harrison mansion in the Upper East Side. She didn't know where to go. At 28, she had dedicated the last 6 years of her life to that family and that man. She had abandoned her career as an administrator to help with the family business, becoming her husband and father-in-law's right hand. The taxi navigated the wet streets of New York City as Emily tried to collect her thoughts. Her first instinct was to call her parents, but she stopped herself, remembering they were traveling through Europe celebrating their 30th anniversary. She didn't want to ruin their special moment. After a few calls, Emily found shelter at Mrs. Wilson's home, her former college professor who had always treated her like a daughter. The 70-year-old woman didn't hesitate to take her in. "My dear, stay as long as you need," Mrs. Wilson said, preparing chamomile tea to calm her former student. "And that baby inside you won't lack for anything." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you—" "Sweetheart, I have 5 children and 12 grandchildren. I recognize the look of a pregnant woman." The older woman smiled, handing her the steaming cup. "When do you plan to tell your husband?" Tears welled up in Emily Harrison's eyes again. "He doesn't want to see me, even if I were painted. In gold, Mrs. Wilson. How am I supposed to tell him I'm expecting 3 of his children?" The revelation about the triplets made the elderly teacher slowly sink into the armchair in her modest living room. "3? Holy Mother!" she exclaimed, making the sign of the cross. Meanwhile, at the Harrison mansion, Richard was being examined by the family doctor. It wasn't a heart attack as they had feared, but the onset of cardiac arrhythmia worsened by the stress of the situation. "Son, you're making a terrible mistake," the patriarch said as soon as the doctor left the room. "I've known Emily for years. She wouldn't do this." "You've always defended her more than your own son," Michael replied bitterly, "but this time the evidence is irrefutable." Richard tried to get up from the bed, but dizziness forced him back. "Michael, at least hear her out. Give her the benefit of the doubt. I've heard enough. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." What Michael didn't know was that Jessica Parker, his personal assistant of 8 years, was listening through the slightly open door, a satisfied smile on her lips. For years, Jessica had harbored an unhealthy obsession with her boss, patiently waiting for the right moment to break the couple apart. It was she who, having access to Emily's phone during a meeting, saw the messages about the surprise party and skillfully deleted parts that provided context, leaving only phrases that, taken out of context, seemed incriminating. Then, she accidentally let Michael see them while searching for a document on his wife's phone. The plan had worked. Now she just needed to solidify her position by Michael's side, becoming the indispensable woman during his crisis. Next morning, after a sleepless night, Emily made a life-changing decision. She wouldn't beg to come back. She would rebuild her life on her own and raise her children with dignity. "I'll hold on until my parents return," she told herself as she prepared a resume to look for a job. "Then I'll decide my next move." 2 days later, she landed a receptionist position at a small children's products company in the West Side of New York City. The salary was modest, but enough to rent a simple apartment and start her new life. Meanwhile, manipulated by Jessica, Michael hired one of the city's most renowned divorce lawyers. His assistant personally ensured the process would be as swift and aggressive as possible, citing infidelity and demanding Emily receive none of the assets acquired during the marriage. "She doesn't even deserve the bread she ate in your house." "Doctor," Jessica told the lawyer in front of an increasingly bitter and distant Michael. Richard, still recovering, tried in vain to make his son reconsider. One morning, after yet another heated argument, the patriarch suffered another, more severe cardiac episode. "Promise me you'll stop this madness, Michael," Richard pleaded, from his hospital bed gripping his son's hand. "Find Emily, talk to her. I'm sure this is all just a terrible misunderstanding." "Dad, she disappeared. No one knows where she is, not even her parents. I called them when they got back from their trip. She ran because she's guilty," Michael insisted, convinced of his version of events. What he didn't know was that Jessica was intercepting all of Emily's attempts to reach out. She had blocked Emily's number on both Michael's and Richard's phones and monitored the corporate emails daily to ensure no messages got through. Weeks turned into months. Emily's belly grew, along with her worries. During a routine checkup, she received terrifying news. "Mrs. Harrison, there's an imbalance in the amniotic fluid between the fetuses," the doctor explained, pointing to the ultrasound. "This could indicate twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. We need to monitor closely and may need to consider fetal surgery." The costs of specialized treatment were far beyond her means. With a heavy heart, Emily sold her engagement ring and other jewelry she had managed to take with her. That diamond ring, a symbol of a love that now seemed as distant as a star, brought in enough to cover the specialized treatment her babies needed. During this time, Emily received unwavering support from Mrs. Wilson, who accompanied her to appointments and helped prepare the small apartment for the arrival of the triplets. "These boys will fill your life with joy," the older woman would say as she painted the nursery a soft shade of green. "You'll see how all this pain will be worth it." During her 6th month of pregnancy, Emily received devastating news. Her parents had been in a serious car accident and were hospitalized. Now, on top of her high-risk pregnancy, she had to worry about her parents. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It means so much to us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. While Emily faced multiple challenges, Michael was sinking deeper into work and bitterness. The Harrison Group thrived under his obsessive management, but the same couldn't be said for his mental health. Jessica, ever cunning, became increasingly present in his life. From efficient assistant to indispensable advisor, she gradually filled the void left by Emily. Her carefully calculated actions seemed genuine to the wounded businessman. "Michael, you need to get out, take a break," Jessica suggested one Friday after a long workday. "You've lived for this company for months." "I'm not in the mood for fun, Jessica," he replied curtly. "It's not fun, it's therapy," she insisted. "Let's have dinner, talk about something other than work." As your friend, I'm worried about you." Reluctantly, Michael agreed. That dinner was the first of many moments Jessica skillfully engineered to get closer. To her boss, always respectful and understanding, she crafted the image of the perfect woman, the opposite of the traitor who had hurt him. Richard watched their growing closeness with suspicion. He had never liked Jessica, despite recognizing her professional competence. There was something in her eyes, a calculating glint that unsettled him. "That woman isn't what she seems, son," the patriarch remarked during a Sunday lunch. "Be careful." "You always distrust everyone except Emily," Michael snapped. "Jessica has been my rock through the hardest times. Unlike some people, she's loyal, but Jessica's loyalty was solely to her own interests." When she discovered Richard had hired a private investigator to find Emily, she sabotaged the effort. Using her access to company records, she fed false information that led the investigation to dead ends. What no one knew was that Elizabeth, Michael's mother and Richard's wife, was conducting her own search. While cleaning the room that had once been Emily's, she found a hidden blood test in the sock drawer, confirming the pregnancy. The shock was instant. Her son had thrown out his pregnant wife, any mother's worst nightmare. Quietly, without telling her husband or son, Elizabeth hired a private investigator. She needed concrete facts before confronting Michael with the truth. Meanwhile, Emily faced the most critical moment of her life. At 7 months pregnant, she went into premature labor. Alone in the apartment, Mrs. Wilson had gone to visit a relative out of town. She felt the first contractions. With difficulty, she called an ambulance and was rushed to the hospital. The triplets were born via an emergency C-section. 3 identical boys, small and fragile, who would need long days in the NICU. "My little warriors," whispered Emily Harrison, touching her son's tiny hands through the incubators. "You are my strength now." Ethan, Noah, and Oliver, names chosen in honor of Emily's father, each weighed just over 2 pounds. The medical team was cautiously optimistic, but warned of the challenges ahead. "Mrs. Harrison, the babies will need to stay hospitalized for at least 2 months, the pediatrician explained. "Their development will be slow and gradual." The costs of the prolonged hospitalization were astronomical. Emily sold the car she had bought with her savings and agreed to work overtime at the company where she was employed. When she wasn't working, she stayed by the incubators, talking to her sons and singing lullabies. One night, exhausted after more than 30 hours without proper sleep, Emily dozed off in the chair beside the babies. She was awakened by a nurse who handed her an envelope. "This arrived for you at the front desk," the nurse said. Inside the envelope, Emily found $10,000 in cash and a note. "To help with the little ones, don't worry, your secret is safe with me." There was no signature, but Emily suspected it might be from Elizabeth, her former mother-in-law. Perhaps she had found out about her grandsons. Either way, in that moment of desperation, the money was a blessing she couldn't refuse. What E.T. Emily didn't know was that the true sender was Margaret Johnson, the secretary in the finance department of the company where she worked. Margaret had noticed the superhuman effort of the young mother and, being the widow of a successful businessman, decided to help her anonymously. After 3 months in the hospital, the triplets were finally discharged. Arriving home with the 3 babies, Emily felt the weight and joy of her new reality. 4 hearts now beat under the same roof, 4 lives bound by invisible, unbreakable ties. "We are a family," she told the little ones, who slept peacefully in their makeshift cribs. A small family, but complete. Emily's routine became a daily marathon, waking up at dawn to nurse, getting ready for work, leaving the babies with a nanny who consumed nearly half her salary, working all day, returning home, caring for the children, sleeping a few hours and starting all over again. The exhaustion was constant, but every smile, every small milestone from the triplets fueled her to keep going. When the boys turned 6 months old, Emily decided it was time to inform Michael about his sons. With Mrs. Wilson's help, she wrote a detailed letter explaining the entire situation. She enclosed photos of the babies and the DNA test results she had taken as a precaution, proving paternity. "He needs to know," Mrs. Wilson said. "These boys have a right to a father, and he has a right to know his children." Emily sent the letter via FedEx Priority to the Harrison Group headquarters, addressed directly to Michael. What she couldn't have predicted was that Jessica Parker, who now controlled nearly all of her boss's correspondence, would intercept the envelope. When Jessica saw the photos of the triplets, her world crumbled. The boys were perfect copies of Michael, the same green eyes, the same face shape, even the identical dimple in the chin. There was no denying paternity. If Michael saw those photos, he would return to Emily immediately. All of Jessica's efforts to win him over would be in vain. Without a second thought, she destroyed the letter and the photos. Faced with a lack of response, Emily tried repeatedly to make contact by phone and email. All attempts were blocked or ignored, thanks to Jessica's maneuvering. "He doesn't want anything to do with the children, Mrs. Wilson," concluded Emily, devastated. "I'll have to move forward on my own." Her determination grew in proportion to her challenges. While caring for the triplets, she decided to resume her studies. She enrolled in a graduate program in business administration, specializing in children's products. Night classes required complicated arrangements with babysitters and the constant help of Mrs. Wilson. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us," Emily said one night, returning from school to find the retired teacher rocking Noah while the other two slept. "Seeing you succeed in life will be my greatest reward," the older woman replied, tears in her eyes. "I always knew you had extraordinary potential." Emily's potential began to flourish through an innovative project she developed for school. Accessories for triplets that made life easier for parents and caregivers. The idea came from her own daily struggles. There are so many baby products on the market, but almost nothing designed specifically for parents of multiples, she explained to her professor during her final project presentation. The project received top marks and a recommendation to be turned into a real business. With her business knowledge and hands-on experience as a mother of triplets, Emily had all the ingredients for success. All she needed was the initial capital. While Emily struggled to balance motherhood, work, and studies, Michael faced his own demons. The void left by Emily was filled with overwork and, increasingly, alcohol. Jessica, ever watchful, used her boss's vulnerability to draw even closer. Nights when she had to drive him home, too drunk to get behind the wheel, became frequent. On one such night, she got what she had long wanted. Michael, vulnerable and intoxicated, gave in to her advances. The next morning, he woke with a terrible hangover and the feeling that he had made a huge mistake. Jessica, however, had already laid the groundwork. "Michael, what happened last night was special for me," she said, handing him a strong coffee. "I know you're still hurt by the past, but I've been here, supporting you for over a year. Maybe it's time to give us a chance." Confused and still wounded by what he believed had been Emily's betrayal, Michael agreed to start a relationship with Jessica. There was no love, at least not on his part, but there was comfort in familiarity and convenience. Richard and Elizabeth watched the situation with growing concern. The patriarch, still weakened by heart problems, saw his son sinking into a relationship he considered toxic. "That woman is manipulating our son, Elizabeth," Richard confided after a tense family dinner, where Jessica monopolized the conversation and answered questions directed at Michael. "He doesn't see it, but he's being controlled." Elizabeth, who continued her secret search for Emily and the grandchildren, simply nodded silently. She had discovered her former daughter-in-law's address, but respected her decision to stay away. Every now and then she sent anonymous financial help, without even Richard knowing. The triplets' first birthday was celebrated with a simple but emotional party. Emily invited a few co-workers, professors from school, and of course Mrs. Wilson, who had become the boys' surrogate grandmother. "Look at them, Emily. They're looking more like their father every day," Mrs. Wilson remarked, watching the little ones play on the living room rug. "Yes, physically they're Michael's spitting image," Emily agreed with a sad smile. "But I'm raising them to have a very different character. I want them to be men who know how to respect a woman, who don't judge before listening, who believe in true love." That night, after the guests had left and the boys had fallen asleep, Emily Harrison made a decision that would change the course of her story. She would invest her last savings into producing the first prototypes of her product line for multiples. "I'm going to build an empire, Mrs. Wilson," she said, determined. "An empire that will ensure my children never go without and that will make them proud of their mother." What Emily didn't know was that miles away, Elizabeth had finally gotten the proof she needed to confront her son. The detective she had hired had photographed Jessica Parker destroying the last letter Emily had sent and had recovered enough fragments to understand its contents. Elizabeth hesitated between telling her son immediately or waiting for the right moment. Michael and Jessica had officially announced their engagement the week before with an extravagant party for New York City's high society. "I need to be careful," thought the matriarch of the Harrison family. "If I reveal everything now, he might not believe me and pull away even further." Fate, however, had other plans. That same afternoon, when Elizabeth had decided to wait for a better moment, Jessica made a fatal mistake. She left her computer unlocked at the office. Rachel, the new intern in the finance department, accidentally opened an email folder while searching for a report. There she discovered dozens of Emily's messages to Michael that had never been delivered, along with drafts Jessica had written pretending to be Emily, with false confessions of infidelity. Shocked, the young intern went straight to Richard, who still visited the company a few times a week. "Mr. Harrison, I need to show you something," she said, trembling, afraid of losing her job, but unable to ignore what she had found. "It's about Mrs. Emily and Mrs. Jessica." Richard asked the young woman to send copies of everything to his personal email and reassured her that her job was safe. It was the proof he needed to open his son's eyes. While the truth threatened to come to light in the Harrison family, Emily was taking her first steps to turn her academic project into reality. With a personal loan and her savings, she rented a small commercial space in an out-of-the-way neighborhood and hired 2 seamstresses to produce the first items in her line. The Triplets bags, with personalized compartments and a color-coded identification system, were the first product to take shape. Next came the strollers adapted for 3 babies, which could be separated into individual units. "This is going to revolutionize the lives of families with multiples," Emily explained to her first investor, a small business owner in the textile industry she had met through a college professor. "These are products designed by someone who lives the challenge every day." The initial investment of $50,000 allowed Emily to quit her job as a receptionist and dedicate herself fully to her new business, named Triple Stars, a loving tribute to her triplets, who were now approaching their 2nd birthday. Mrs. Wilson remained her biggest support, taking care of the boys while Emily juggled between the small factory and meetings with potential clients and suppliers. The first big opportunity came when a motherhood influencer discovered Triple Stars products at a small entrepreneurs fair. Enchanted by their practicality and quality, she made a spontaneous post that went viral among mothers of twins and triplets. Overnight, Emily found herself flooded with orders from all over the country. The small makeshift factory couldn't keep up with the growing demand. It was time to expand, and fast. Meanwhile, Richard finally gathered the courage to confront his son with the evidence of Jessica's manipulations. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, he invited Michael to have coffee in the office of the mansion, far from the watchful ears of his daughter-in-law. "Son, what I'm about to show you will change your life," said the patriarch, handing him a folder with copies of the emails and the detective's photos. "I just ask that you look through everything before drawing any conclusions." Reluctantly, Michael opened the folder. As he read the documents and examined the photos, his face shifted between expressions of shock, anger, and deep sorrow. The evidence was undeniable. Jessica had manipulated everything from the start. "How could I have been so blind?" he murmured, letting tears stream freely down his face. "You were hurt, son. Hurt people don't see clearly," Richard consoled him. "I need to find Emily, Dad. I need to apologize, to try to fix this disaster," Michael said, standing abruptly. "There's one more thing you should know," Richard said hesitantly. "Emily was pregnant when you kicked her out of the house." Michael's legs gave way. He had to brace himself against the desk to keep from falling. "Pregnant? My God, did she have the baby? Where are they? How? I don't know all the details, son. Your mother has been keeping discreet tabs, but she respected the distance Emily wanted to keep. What we do know is that they're triplets, 3 boys, and they're doing well. The revelation struck Michael like lightning. Not only had he cast out his innocent wife, but he'd also missed the first years of his 3 sons' lives. Guilt consumed him, eating at his soul like acid. "I need to see them right now, Dad," he exclaimed, already grabbing his car keys. "Calm down, Michael," Richard advised. "You can't just show up at her door after nearly 2 years. We need to do this right. Besides, you have a more immediate problem to deal with." Michael understood immediately. He needed to end things with Jessica before attempting any reconciliation with Emily and the boys. When he returned to his apartment, where Jessica had practically been living, he found his fiancée organizing details for their wedding, scheduled for 3 months later. "Darling, I was thinking we should change the flower colors. What do you think about—" Jessica stopped when she saw the dark expression on her fiancé's face. "Did something happen?" "It's over, Jessica," Michael said with chilling calm. "I know everything. The intercepted messages, the lies, all of it." The woman's face instantly paled. She tried to deny it, then to cry, then to threaten. But nothing shook Michael's resolve. That same night she left the apartment with only her personal belongings, dismissed from both Michael's personal and professional life. The next day, Michael began his search for Emily and the boys. With Elizabeth's help, he learned that his ex-wife had become a successful small business owner, creating products for families with multiples. "She's incredible, son," Elizabeth said, showing him a business magazine article that featured Triplets as one of the most promising startups in the industry. She built all of this practically on her own, while raising 3 children. Michael felt a mix of pride and shame. Pride for Emily's strength and determination. Shame for ever doubting her character. After multiple failed attempts to reach her by phone and email, Emily had blocked all numbers associated with the Harrisons. Michael decided to visit the small Triplets factory in person. When he arrived, however, he was told the company had relocated to a larger facility in another neighborhood after receiving significant investment from a business group. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The feeling of being too late tormented Michael. With each passing day, he felt the chasm between him and his lost family growing wider. Emily seemed to be moving forward, building a successful life without him. In one last desperate act, Michael wrote a long letter of apology, explaining everything that had happened and begging for a chance to meet his children. He included his personal number and address and sent it to the Triplets office. This time the letter reached Emily. It was a Friday afternoon when her assistant brought in the mail. Recognizing the handwriting on the envelope, her heart raced. With trembling hands, she opened the letter and read every word Michael had written. Tears blurred her vision as years of resentment and pain resurfaced like a storm. Mrs. Wilson, who now officially worked as the coordinator of the in-house daycare Emily had created for Triplets employees' children, found her crying in the office. "It's from him," Emily said simply, handing the letter to her mentor. The older woman read it carefully, nodding occasionally before returning the paper. "What do you plan to do?" "I don't know, Mrs. Wilson. The boys are almost 2.5. They don't know their father, but I always show them pictures and tell them stories. Ethan even says Daddy when he sees the photo." Emily wiped her tears. "I'm afraid to let him into our lives and have him abandon us again." "My dear, everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe not in your heart if that's what you choose, but as the boy's father," the wise teacher advised. "And besides, you're strong now. You're not that vulnerable young woman who left the mansion with a suitcase in her hands. You've built your own empire." Emily reflected on her mentor's words. It was true. She was in a very different place. Now, Triplets had grown exponentially over the past year, especially after receiving an investment from William Foster, a 70-year-old businessman who had lost his only daughter in an accident and saw in Emily the same entrepreneurial spirit as his late child. With William's financial backing, the company had expanded to a modern factory with over 50 employees. Their products, once sold only online and in small shops, were now in major retail chains across the country and beginning to be exported. "I'll think carefully, Mrs. Wilson," she said finally. "The boys deserve to know their father no matter what happened between us, but I need to make sure he's truly sorry, that he won't hurt them." That night, after putting the triplets to bed, Emily picked up her phone and, for the first time in over 2 years, dialed Michael's number. The call was answered on the first ring. "Emily?" Michael's anxious voice came through. "Is it really you?" "Yes, Michael, it's me," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. "I got your letter. Thank you for calling. I don't even know where to start. I have so much to say, to explain." "You don't need to explain now," Emily cut in. "I read your letter and I understand what happened. That doesn't mean everything's okay, that I've forgotten what I went through, but..." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I believe you deserve to meet your sons." The silence that followed was broken only by Michael's stifled sobs. "When?" he finally managed to ask. "Sunday at Central Park, 10 a.m. near the playground. We'll be there. I'll be there, on time, I promise." Michael's voice trembled with emotion. "Emily, We'll talk on Sunday, Michael," she interrupted, feeling she couldn't bear to hear declarations of regret or love right then. "Good night." As she hung up, Emily let the tears flow freely. Hearing her ex-husband's voice had been harder than she'd imagined. No matter how much she had rebuilt her life, no matter how successful she was now, a part of her heart still bled from the wounds of the past. In the days that followed, Emily carefully prepared the triplets for the meeting with their father. She showed them more photos, shared positive stories about Michael, explaining in simple terms that Daddy had been traveling but had now returned to meet them. Meanwhile, Michael lived through his own anxiety. He bought gifts for the children, decorated his apartment with photos Elizabeth had secretly gathered over the years, and spent hours imagining how the encounter would go. On Sunday morning, the sky over New York City displayed a rare blue, free of clouds or pollution. Michael arrived at the park an hour early, carefully choosing a bench with a view of the playground, but discreet enough not to draw attention. At exactly 10 o'clock, he saw Emily approaching. His heart stopped for a moment. She was even more beautiful than in his memories, radiating a confidence and maturity she hadn't possessed before. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, and her shorter hair framed her face perfectly. Then he saw them, 3 identical boys holding their mother's hands walking toward him. The shock of their resemblance hit him like a punch. It was like seeing 3 miniature versions of himself. The same green eyes, the same blonde hair, even their way of walking was familiar. He stood on shaky legs, unable to hold back his tears. Emily stopped a few feet away, knelt to the boy's height and pointed to Michael. "Remember Daddy from the pictures? That's him. Do you want to go say hi?" The 3 little ones studied the teary stranger with curiosity. It was Ethan, the most outgoing of the 3, who took the first step. He approached timidly, and to everyone's surprise extended his small hand. "Hi, Daddy. I'm Ethan." Michael crouched down, overwhelmed, and gently shook his son's hand. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Daddy. So happy to meet you." Noah and Oliver, seeing their brother was safe, came closer too. Within minutes, the initial awkwardness melted away, and the boys eagerly showed Michael their toys, while he responded with genuine enthusiasm to each new discovery. Emily watched from a slight distance, her feelings conflicted. The instant connection between father and sons was undeniable, as if blood recognized blood, no matter the lost time. The morning passed quickly, with Michael absorbing every detail about his children. Ethan was the natural leader, always ahead in games. Noah, the most sensitive, cried when the ducks in the pond swam away without eating the bread he offered. Oliver, the observer, studied everything carefully before acting. When it was time to leave, the triplets protested, unwilling to part with the fascinating Daddy from the pictures who had suddenly appeared in their lives. "Can we see Daddy again tomorrow?" Noah asked, his eyes pleading. Emily exchanged a glance with Michael, who waited anxiously for her answer. "Maybe Daddy can come for dinner one night this week," she suggested, surprising even herself with the offer. Michael's face lit up with hope. "It would be an honor," he replied simply. That meeting in the park was the first of many. In the weeks that followed, Michael gradually became a constant presence in the triplets' lives. It started with supervised dinners, then weekend outings, until eventually he spent entire afternoons taking the boys to meet their paternal grandparents. Elizabeth and Richard wept when they met their grandsons for the first time. The once silent, somber mansion now echoed with children's laughter and joyful chaos. Richard's heart, weakened by past troubles, seemed to grow younger with each visit from the little ones. The relationship between Emily and Michael, however, remained strictly focused on their children. She maintained an emotional distance that he respected, understanding that his betrayal of trust had caused deep wounds. Their professional lives were moving in opposite directions. While Emily's triple stars flourished and expanded, the Harrison Group faced growing difficulties. Jessica's abrupt departure, combined with some unsuccessful investments Michael had made during his bitter period, resulted in a troubling financial situation. "We're close to collapse, Dad," Michael confessed during a board meeting. "The banks are pressuring us, suppliers are threatening to halt deliveries. We need an urgent solution." Richard, who had partially resumed control of the company to help his son, suggested selling non-essential assets to generate immediate liquidity. The family mansion, some coastal properties, and the fleet of luxury cars were added to the list. "It won't be enough, Dad," Michael replied after reviewing the numbers. "We need a substantial capital injection or to consider selling part of the company." The news that the Harrison Group was seeking investors or buyers spread quickly through the market. Among those interested was William Foster, the same investor who had fueled Triple Star's growth. On a rainy afternoon, he approached Emily in her office with an unexpected proposal. "The Harrison Group is for sale, my dear," said the silver-haired gentleman, adjusting his glasses. "I'm considering making an offer, but I'd like to involve Triple Stars in the deal." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Why? They're completely different sectors. They sell luxury cars, we produce baby and children's products." "Diversification, my dear," William smiled. "Besides, I've been keeping an eye on your ex-husband. He's genuinely trying to be a good father, don't you think?" Emily didn't answer immediately. It was true that Michael had been dedicated and loving toward their children in recent months. He had even offered generous child support, which she refused, as she was already financially stable. "William, with all due respect, I don't mix business with personal life," she finally replied. "I understand and respect that," the old businessman said, rising to leave. "But remember, Emily, fate has curious ways of bringing together paths that seemed forever separated." That night, after putting the boys to bed, Emily reflected at length on her conversation with William. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the impact the Harrison Group's bankruptcy would have on Richard, her former father-in-law, who had always supported her, or on the legacy that would one day belong to her children. She decided she needed, at the very least, to better understand the situation. The next day, she scheduled a meeting with Michael to discuss the triplets' financial future, using it as a pretext to gauge the company's true condition. The meeting took place in her office, neutral ground. Michael arrived punctually with visible dark circles betraying sleepless nights. "Thank you for seeing me, Emily," he said, genuinely grateful. "How are the boys?" "They're wonderful. They ask about you every day," she replied, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Michael, I'll get straight to the point. I've heard rumors about the Harrison Group's financial situation, and I'm concerned about how it might affect our children's future." His face hardened momentarily, but soon gave way to resignation. "I won't lie to you, the situation is critical. I made serious mistakes during the time I was blinded by anger and manipulated by Jessica," he admitted, looking her straight in the eye. "But I'm fighting to save what I can. The boys will have their future secured even if I have to start from scratch." The sincerity in Michael's voice touched something deep within Emily. The man before her was no longer the arrogant, impulsive young man she had known, but someone who had suffered, made mistakes, learned and matured through pain. "What if there's another way?" she asked cautiously. "What kind of way?" Emily explained William Foster's proposal, and the possibility of a joint operation that could save the Harrison Group while expanding Triple Star's horizons. "It would be purely a business partnership," she emphasized. "It has nothing to do with our personal situation." Michael studied her for a long moment before replying, "Emily, I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept. I don't want you risking everything you've built with so much sacrifice just to save the company that was my responsibility to protect. I'll find another solution." The answer surprised Emily. The Michael she had known in the past would have accepted her help without hesitation, seeing it as something she owed him. This new Michael, however, seemed to prioritize her well-being above his own interests. "Think about your parents, Michael," she argued. "Your father poured his whole life into that company. And think about the boys. One day, they might want to be part of the family legacy." "I've thought about all that, believe me," he replied with a sad smile. "But it wouldn't be fair to you. You moved on, built something extraordinary on your own. I can't ask you to risk that for my mistakes." Emily felt a strange mix of admiration and nostalgia. The man before her was at once the Michael she had loved and a stranger who had learned lessons she never imagined possible. "I'll think more about it," she finally said. "Maybe there's a solution that benefits everyone." As he left the meeting, Michael felt a spark of hope, not for the possible salvation of his company, but for the fact that Emily had even considered helping him after all the pain he had caused her. Over the following week, Emily consulted merger and acquisition specialists, thoroughly analyzed the Harrison Group's financial situation with Michael's permission, and had lengthy discussions with William Foster about the risks and opportunities of the deal. "I see extraordinary potential here, my dear," the seasoned businessman insisted. "Imagine a luxury dealership with dedicated family spaces, exclusive children's products tied to car brands. The possibilities are endless." Emily had to admit that, from a strictly business perspective, the proposal made sense. Triple Stars was ready for international expansion, and the Harrison Group's global structure, though weakened, offered an ideal platform for that leap. By Friday, she had made her final decision. She called an urgent meeting with Michael, William Foster, and their respective legal teams for the following Monday. The chosen location was the office of William's attorney, neutral ground for all parties. The weekend passed quietly, with Michael taking the triplets to the zoo on Saturday and Emily enjoying a restful Sunday alone. The boys came back exhausted, but happy, full of stories about the animals and proudly wearing the safari hats their father had bought them. "Daddy said he'll take us to see real lions in Africa one day," Ethan announced excitedly during bath time. "Oh, really?" Emily replied, lathering his hair. "That would be amazing." "He said you can come too, Mommy," Gabriel added innocently. "He said it would be more fun if we all went together like a family." The comment struck Emily unexpectedly. The idea of being a family with Michael again seemed so distant, so unlikely, and yet a part of her couldn't help but wonder what it would be like. On Monday morning, Emily Harrison woke up early, carefully chose an elegant beige outfit, very similar to the one in the image accompanying this story, and meticulously prepared the triplets. She dressed them in white shirts and beige pants, combed their identical blonde hair, and explained that they were going somewhere important with Mommy. "Will we see Daddy too?" asked Oliver, the most observant of the three. "Yes, Daddy will be there," Emily confirmed, adjusting her son's shirt collar. What she didn't tell the little ones was that they would be key players in the meeting that would change everyone's destiny. Instead of driving her usual car, Emily took the boys to LaGuardia Airport, where the private jet William Foster had made available to the Triple Stars was waiting. It was the first time the triplets had ever flown, and their excitement was palpable. "Are we gonna fly like superheroes, Mommy?" exclaimed Ethan, jumping with joy at the sight of the plane. "Yes, sweetheart, like superheroes." Emily smiled, helping them climb the jet stairs. The plan was simple but impactful. Arrive at the meeting in the private jet, symbolically showcasing Emily's rise from the young woman kicked out with just a suitcase to the successful businesswoman returning to save the empire that had rejected her. And more importantly, arrive with the triplets, formally introducing the heirs of the Harrison Group to society. The flight was short, just a scenic tour over New York City before landing again. The goal wasn't practicality, but the powerful symbolism of the image they would create upon arrival. When the jet landed, a limousine was waiting to take them to the lawyer's office in the city's financial district. Emily took a deep breath, straightened her children's clothes once more, and prepared for the moment she had meticulously planned. The law office of Dr. Howard Miller occupied the entire 30th floor of one of the most imposing buildings on Park Avenue. When the limousine stopped at the entrance, curious glances turned toward the elegant blonde woman stepping out, with 3 identical boys. "Hello, Mrs. Harrison, welcome," greeted the doorman, who had been informed of her arrival. "Dr. Howard is waiting for you on the 30th floor." Emily firmly held Ethan and Noah's hands, while Oliver, always the most attached to his mother, clung to the hem of her dress. In the elevator, she smoothed her hair one last time and took a deep breath. "Mommy, are you nervous?" asked Noah, always the most sensitive to others' emotions. "Just a little, sweetheart," she admitted, smiling to reassure him. "Sometimes grown-ups get nervous too." "Don't be scared, Mommy," Ethan said with the confidence of his 4 years. "We're with you." Those innocent words filled Emily with courage. Yes, she had her 3 little warriors by her side. She was no longer the fragile woman Michael had cast out years ago. When the elevator doors opened on the 30th floor, Dr. Howard's secretary was already waiting. "Mrs. Harrison, what a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Howard asked me to take you straight to the conference room. Everyone is already present." Emily nodded, straightened her posture, and walked with her children down the hallway, the sound of her heels echoing on the marble floor. Before entering, she knelt to the triplets' height. "Remember what Mommy told you. We'll go in. Say hello to everyone, and then Aunt Kimberly will take you to the playroom while Mommy talks with the other grown-ups." All 3 nodded in unison, a sight that never failed to charm onlookers. The secretary opened the doors to the spacious conference room and announced, "Mr. Howard, Mrs. Harrison and her children have arrived." Every head turned toward the door. Seated around the large mahogany table were William Foster, with his ever-present unlit cigar between his fingers, Michael visibly tense, Richard thinner and more worn than Emily remembered, yet with eyes shining with emotion, Elizabeth, elegant as always, and the lawyers and financial advisors from both companies. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael froze, his eyes fixed on the 3 boys who were perfect copies of himself. Richard brought a hand to his chest, tears already streaming freely. Elizabeth covered her mouth to stifle a sob. "Good morning, everyone," said Emily with a calmness she didn't feel. "I apologize for the delay, but we had to make a small detour to show New York City from above to the boys." "We flew in a plane, Uncle William," exclaimed Ethan, recognizing the old businessman he'd met a few times before. "Did you now, champ?" William smiled, standing to greet the little ones. "I bet that was quite the adventure." While William distracted the triplets, Emily faced Michael, who remained motionless in his chair, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. She knew exactly the impact the scene had. The 3 boys, dressed identically, were living proof of their connection to Michael. "These are your sons, Michael," Emily said, finally breaking the spell. "Ethan, Noah, and Oliver. Boys, this is the daddy Mommy always talks about." The 3 turned simultaneously, studying with curiosity the man their mother had pointed to. Oliver, the observant one, noticed first. "He has the same eyes as us, Mommy." Michael rose slowly, his legs unsteady. He approached his sons with hesitant steps, as if afraid they might disappear if he moved too quickly. "Hi," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "Hi, Daddy," the 3 replied in unison, looking at him with the natural curiosity of children. Kimberly, Dr. Howard Miller's assistant, seized the moment to introduce herself. "Hello, boys. How about coming with me to check out our amazing game room? We have video games, building blocks, and even a little movie theater." The triplets' eyes lit up at the promise of fun, but they glanced at their mother, waiting for her approval. "You can go, my loves. Mommy will come get you as soon as the meeting is over," Emily assured them, kissing each one on the forehead. Before leaving, Ethan, always the boldest, approached Michael and asked, "Will you still be here when we come back, Daddy?" Michael's heart seemed to stop for a moment. It was the first time he'd ever been called Daddy, and the feeling was indescribable. "I will, son. "I promise," he answered, his voice trembling. When the children left with Kimberly, the mood in the room shifted drastically. Michael, still standing, turned to Emily with tear-filled eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you hide my sons from me for so long?" Emily held his gaze without flinching. "I tried to tell you, Michael, many times. Letters, emails, phone calls, all intercepted by your ex-fiancé," she replied calmly. "But we're not here to dwell on the past. We're here to decide the future of our companies and the future of our children." William cleared his throat, taking control of the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, we're here to discuss the possibility of a merger between the Harrison Group and Triple Stars, with my group as the majority investor. The documents have already been reviewed by everyone, so let's get straight to the point. This merger would save the Harrison Group from imminent bankruptcy and provide Triple Stars with the global structure it needs for international expansion." Richard, who still hadn't managed to tear his eyes away from the door through which his grandchildren had left, finally spoke. "Before we discuss business, I need to say something." The patriarch rose with difficulty, leaning on the table. "Emily, my dear, I have no words to express how sorry I am for everything you've been through. Please forgive this old man for not being strong enough to prevent what happened." "Richard, it wasn't your fault," replied Emily, moved by the fragility of the father-in-law she had once so admired. "You were also a victim of circumstances." "But I should have insisted more, investigated further," he continued, his voice breaking. "Elizabeth tried to warn me so many times about that." "Dad, please, let's focus on the reason for this meeting," interrupted Michael, visibly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Despite his remorse, he still struggled to accept the extent of his mistake and the manipulation he'd endured. "The company your grandfather founded, which I expanded, and which you now run, Michael, is on the brink of bankruptcy," Richard declared bitterly. "And all because you were blind enough to believe a lie and drive away the only person who truly cared about you and the future of this family." A heavy silence fell over the room. Michael lowered his head, unable to deny the truth in his father's harsh words. "Richard, what's done is done," Emily interjected, surprising everyone. "I'm not here to accuse anyone or seek revenge. I'm here because I believe we can turn this situation into something positive for everyone." William Foster smiled, once again admiring the maturity and strategic vision of his protégé. "Emily is right. Let's focus on solutions," agreed the old businessman. "Dr. Howard, please present the formal proposal." The lawyer distributed folders containing the details of the operation. The proposed structure was bold. A holding company would be created to control both the Harrison Group and Triple Stars, with William Foster as the majority shareholder, 51%, Emily with 30%, and the Harrison family with the remaining 19%. Management of the companies would remain separate, with Michael continuing to lead the Harrison Group and Emily at the helm of Triple Stars. This proposal ensures the survival of the Harrison Group and allows Triple Stars to utilize the entire international infrastructure already established by the dealership network, explained Dr. Howard. Additionally, it includes the creation of dedicated spaces for Triple Stars products within Harrison Group stores, fostering synergy between the businesses. Michael studied the documents in silence, his mind torn between the relief of seeing a solution to the financial crisis and the emotional impact of discovering he was the father of triplets. "This means I'll lose majority control of my family's company," he concluded at last, looking at Emily. "This is your revenge, isn't it?" Emily sighed, weary of the accusations. "No, Michael. If I wanted revenge, I would have let your company sink and then bought the remains for a fraction of their worth. This proposal is fair considering the Harrison Group's current financial situation and Triple Star's market value. I'm giving up part of what I built alone to save your family's legacy, which is also our children's legacy." Richard tapped the table lightly, drawing his son's attention. "Michael, stop acting like a spoiled child. You should be on your knees, thanking Emily for even considering helping after what you did to her. If it weren't for her, we'd all be on the streets right now." Michael ran a hand through his hair, visibly shaken. He looked at the documents again, then at Emily and finally at his parents. "I need a moment," he said, abruptly standing and leaving the room. Emily exchanged worried glances with William. She hadn't expected such an intense reaction. Perhaps she had underestimated Michael's pride. "He'll come back," assured Elizabeth, breaking the silence. "He just needs to process everything. In less than an hour, he found out he's the father of triplets and that the woman he sent away has returned to save his empire. That's a lot to take in at once." Emily nodded in understanding. She excused herself and stepped out to check on the children in the playroom. She found them engrossed in building blocks, constructing an impressive tower under Kimberly's watchful eye. "Mommy, look what we're building!" Noah exclaimed when he saw her. "It's a building just like Daddy's," Ethan added, pointing at the structure. "It's beautiful, my darlings," Emily smiled, sitting down between them. "Are you having fun?" "Yes," they chorused. "But where's Daddy?" "He said he'd stay." Emily's heart clenched. The boys were already growing attached to Michael despite the short time they'd spent together. "Daddy is talking about important things with Grandpa Richard. He'll come see you soon," she promised, hoping it was true. When she returned to the meeting room, she found Michael already back, his expression calmer. "Emily, can we talk privately for a minute?" he asked as she entered. She nodded, and they stepped into a small adjoining room. The boys asked about Sayu, she said as soon as the door closed. "I'll never break a promise to them," Michael replied solemnly. "Never again." An uncomfortable silence settled between them. "Why are you doing this, Emily?" he finally asked. "After everything I did, why are you helping me?" She took a moment to gather her thoughts before answering. "I'm not doing this for you, Michael. I'm doing it for your parents who always treated me like their own. For the family legacy that will one day belong to our children. And honestly, for business too. The proposal makes commercial sense." Michael studied her face, searching for signs of other emotions, resentment or, perhaps he dared to hope, some lingering love. "What about us?" he asked softly. "Is there any chance for us, Emily?" The question caught her off guard. She had expected discussions about the deal's terms, questions about the children, but not this. "Michael, I just came back into your life with 3 children you didn't even know existed. We're about to merge our companies in a high-risk venture. I think we already have enough complications without adding that question to the mix," she replied diplomatically. "You're right, as always," he agreed with a sad smile. "One step at a time. Let's go back to the meeting and finalize this deal. After that, well, we'll see what fate has in store for us." Back in the main room, Michael announced his decision. "I accept the proposal's terms with one condition," he declared to everyone present. "I want a clause ensuring that if the company becomes profitable again within the next 5 years, the Harrison family will have the option to buy back part of the shares sold to Williams Group." "That seems fair," William agreed, glancing at Emily, who nodded. The lawyers set to work drafting the new clause, while financial advisors refined the details. Meanwhile, Elizabeth discreetly approached Emily. "My dear, I have no words to thank you for what you're doing for our family," she said, holding her former daughter-in-law's hands, "and for letting me meet my grandchildren, even if it's late." "They'll love having you as their grandmother, Elizabeth," Emily smiled. "I've always spoken highly of you to them." "Even after everything?" Elizabeth asked, surprised. "I never wanted them to grow up resenting their father's family, so I always showed them photos and told them positive stories. They knew their father was traveling and that their grandparents were wonderful people they'd meet one day." Elizabeth couldn't hold back her tears. "You're extraordinary, Emily. My son was a fool for not trusting you." The meeting lasted all morning. When all the documents were finally ready for signing, Emily suggested, "Why don't we bring the boys to watch? After all, one day all of this will be theirs." The suggestion was met with enthusiasm, especially by Richard, eager to spend more time with his grandsons. Kimberly went to get the triplets, who entered the room curious about so many adults gathered together. "Come here, my champions," called Emily, opening her arms. "Mommy and Daddy are going to sign some very important papers, and we wanted you to see." The 3 stood between Emily and Michael, watching attentively as their parents signed the multiple contracts, formalizing the merger of the companies. "What do these papers do, Mommy?" asked Oliver, always the most inquisitive. They combine Mommy's work with Daddy's work, so we can build something even bigger and better for you in the future, Emily explained simply. Like our block tower? Compared Noah, referring to the structure they had built in the playroom. Exactly like the block tower, confirmed Michael, amazed by his son's insight. We're building something strong and beautiful together. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. After the documents were signed, William Foster suggested lunch to celebrate the new partnership. Everyone headed to the restaurant on the top floor of the building with a panoramic view of New York City. The triplets, thrilled by the glass elevator and the height, could barely sit still at the table. I've never seen the sky so close, exclaimed Ethan, his face pressed against the window. Michael watched his children with a mix of pride and sadness for the lost years. Every expression, every little gesture of theirs was a fascinating discovery. How could he have missed their first steps, their first words, so many precious moments? During lunch, the adults eagerly discussed plans for the new holding company. While the triplets charmed everyone with their energy and distinct personalities, despite their identical appearances. How do you tell them apart? Michael asked Emily when they were standing side by side, watching the boys interact with their grandparents. At first it was hard, she admitted. That's why I created a color system for their clothes and belongings, but over time you notice the subtle differences. Ethan has a more confident look, Noah is more of a dreamer, and Oliver observes everything carefully before acting. Their complete personalities, each in their own way, Michael observed, amazed. You've done an incredible job, Emily. Thank you, she replied, genuinely touched by the recognition. It wasn't easy, but every sacrifice was worth it. The conversation was interrupted by William Foster, who lightly tapped his champagne glass to get everyone's attention. I'd like to propose a toast, announced the seasoned businessman, to the union of two extraordinary companies and, more importantly, to the reunion of a family. May this be just the beginning of a new era of prosperity for all. Everyone raised their glasses, including the triplets with their juice cups, in a moment of genuine celebration. After lunch, as everyone prepared to leave, Michael approached Emily again. Can I see the boys this weekend? He asked hesitantly. Maybe take them to the park or something. Of course, she agreed. They've already asked when they'd see you again. A smile lit up Michael's face. Thank you. And what about you? Could we have dinner sometime, just the two of us, to talk about the future, about the boys? Emily felt a slight blush rise to her cheeks. No matter how much she tried to deny it, there was something in Michael's remorseful gaze that still stirred her. Let's take it slow, Michael. One step at a time, remember, she replied, more to herself than to him. Let's focus on making this partnership work and establishing a comfortable routine for the boys. The rest, we'll see in time. Michael nodded, understanding he'd need to regain Emily's trust gradually. He had made a terrible mistake, and he knew reconciliation, if it ever happened, would be a long process. In the weeks that followed, news of the merger between the Harrison Group and Triple Stars sent ripples through the financial market. Economic newspapers highlighted the boldness of the deal, while business magazines speculated about the corporate romance between the former spouses. What the public didn't know were the challenges behind the scenes. Integrating such distinct corporate cultures proved harder than expected. While the Harrison Group operated with rigid processes and traditional hierarchy, Triple Stars had a more horizontal and innovative approach. Michael and Emily met almost daily to resolve operational issues, always maintaining professionalism, despite the romantic tension lingering in the air during these meetings. The triplets, on the other hand, adapted quickly to the new family dynamic. Michael became a constant presence on weekends, taking them on outings and gradually getting to know each of their unique personalities. "Daddy, why don't you sleep at our house like my friends' dads do?" Oliver asked one afternoon as Michael helped him with a puzzle. The innocent question caught the businessman off guard. "Well, son, sometimes moms and dads need to live in separate houses for a while," he tried to explain, "but that doesn't mean we love you any less." "Mommy said you were traveling for a long time, but now you're back," Noah chimed in. "Are you going to travel again?" "No, little one," Michael assured, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll never be away from you again. I promise." Meanwhile, Emily faced her own inner conflicts. No matter how hard she tried to keep her guard up, seeing Michael interact with their children with such love and dedication softened her heart day by day. Mrs. Wilson, ever perceptive, noticed the change in her former student. "Your eyes shine differently when you talk about him now," the older woman remarked during tea in her modest home. "I don't know what you're talking about," Emily deflected, pretending interest in a magazine on the table. "Dear, I've lived long enough to recognize when love insists on resurfacing even after so much pain," her mentor continued. "It's not wrong to give a second chance if he's truly changed." Emily sighed deeply. "I'm afraid, Mrs. Wilson. Afraid to open my heart again and get hurt. Afraid to trust and be betrayed. No matter how remorseful and transformed Michael seems, the scars are still here." "Fear is natural, my dear, but don't let it stop you from being happy. Watch his actions, not just his words. Time will show if the change is genuine." One evening, about 2 months after the agreement was signed, Emily received an unexpected call. It was Rachel, the former intern at the Harrison Group who had exposed Jessica's manipulations. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I thought you should know," the young woman said, clearly nervous. "I saw Jessica today. She was at the mall watching Mr. Michael with your kids." A chill ran down Emily's spine. Since the breakup, Jessica had completely disappeared, and everyone assumed she'd left the city as required by the termination agreement. "Are you sure it was her?" Emily asked, trying to stay calm. "Absolutely. She was wearing sunglasses and a hat, but I recognized the way she walked." She was jotting something down in a small notebook while watching the children. Emily thanked them for the information and hung up, her heart racing. Her maternal instincts immediately went on high alert. She called Michael, who was driving the boys back after a trip to the mall. "Michael, where are you?" she asked as soon as he answered. "In the car, heading back to your place. Why? Did something happen?" "Rachel saw Jessica at the mall watching you." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Michael too feared what that unstable woman might do. "We'll be there in 10 minutes, he finally said. "I'll keep an eye out for any suspicious cars." When they arrived, Emily was already waiting anxiously at the door. She hugged the boys tightly as soon as they stepped inside, relief evident on her face. "Stay here tonight," she suggested to Michael once the kids were distracted in the game room. "At least until we figure out what Jessica is up to." He agreed without hesitation, equally concerned for their children's safety. That night, while the triplets slept, Michael and Emily talked at length on the house's patio, sharing worries and memories, the wall between them slowly crumbling. "I never thought she'd go this far," Michael admitted, referring to Jessica. "I always knew she was ambitious and a little obsessive, but I never imagined she was capable of so much manipulation." "Obsessed people are unpredictable," Emily replied. "First thing tomorrow, I'm tightening security at the house and the boys' school." "I'll hire a detective to track her down," Michael decided. "If she's watching us, we need to know why." Their conversations stretched late into the night, shifting from practical concerns to deeper reflections about their shared past and the mistakes they'd made. "I never got the chance to properly say how sorry I am, Emily," Michael said at one point, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just for believing Jessica's lies, but for not even giving you a chance to explain, for being so arrogant and blind." "We were young, Michael," she replied, surprising herself with the lack of bitterness in her voice. "You were always jealous and impulsive, and she knew how to exploit that weakness." "That doesn't excuse me," he insisted. "I lost precious years of my children's lives because of my wounded pride. I lost you." The last words hung in the air like an unplanned confession. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to rewind to when they were just two young people in love, before the hurt and disappointment. The moment was interrupted by the sound of Emily's phone. It was the security guard from the gated community, informing her that a woman had tried to enter claiming to be a relative. "What did she look like?" Emily asked, exchanging a worried glance with Michael. "Tall, thin brown hair, said she was your cousin and had an urgent gift to deliver." "I don't have any cousins in New York City. Don't let anyone in without—" My explicit permission, she instructed before ending the call. It was her, wasn't it? Michael asked, his face tense. Most likely. She's following us, Michael, and that terrifies me. That night, neither of them slept well. Michael improvised a bed on the living room couch, positioning himself strategically to keep an eye on the front door and the hallway leading to the boys' rooms. In the morning, Emily woke to the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of children's laughter. When she reached the kitchen, she found Michael making animal-shaped pancakes while the triplets eagerly suggested which animal to make next. "Good morning," she said, leaning against the doorframe, watching the domestic scene she never thought she'd witness again. "Mom, Dad makes pancakes that look like animals," Ethan exclaimed proudly, holding up his plate with an elephant-shaped pancake. "I see," she smiled, stepping closer to grab a cup of coffee. "Very impressive." "I learned by watching YouTube videos," confessed Michael, skillfully flipping a pancake shaped like a lion. The boys woke up early and were hungry. There was something so natural and right about that scene that Emily felt a tightness in her chest. This was how it should have been from the beginning, the five of them as a family, sharing simple moments like a Saturday breakfast. After breakfast, while the boys watched cartoons in the living room, Michael and Emily discussed their next steps regarding Jessica's threat. "I've already contacted the detective. He's on his way to the mall to check the security cameras," Michael informed her. "I've also instructed the legal department to file for a restraining order, based on her history and the implicit threats." "Good," Emily nodded. "In the meantime, I'd prefer the boys stay home. We can have a movie and game day right here." Michael agreed, equally concerned for their son's safety. No matter how hard he tried to hide it, guilt gnawed at him. He was the one who had brought that dangerous woman into their lives. The Saturday passed quietly inside the house, with all five of them enjoying each other's company in a way that felt both new and familiar. For the triplets, it was an unprecedented joy to have both parents present, playing and interacting like the families they saw in movies. By evening, as Michael read the boys a bedtime story, Emily received a call from the hired detective. "Mrs. Harrison, I can confirm it was indeed Jessica Parker at the mall yesterday. We obtained clear footage from the security cameras. More concerning, we discovered she rented an apartment just 3 blocks from your home, with a direct view of the gated community's entrance." Emily's blood ran cold. Jessica's obsession was even more serious than they'd imagined. "Is there legal grounds to arrest her?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Unfortunately, no, not unless she makes a direct threat or attempts physical contact. Watching from a distance, as disturbing as it is, isn't a crime." Emily thanked him and hung up, feeling as vulnerable as she had in the days after being cast out of the Harrison mansion. When Michael came downstairs after putting the boys to bed, he found her on the porch, hugging herself despite the warm night. "What happened?" he asked, sitting beside her. Emily relayed the detective's call, watching Michael's face pale as he grasped the severity of the situation. "This is sick obsession," he muttered, running a hand through his hair nervously. "You can't stay here, it's not safe." "And where would we go, Michael? The boys have school routines, I can't just uproot them because of her." "Come to my parents' mansion," he suggested without hesitation. "It's the safest place in New York City, 24-hour security, high walls. You'll stay there until we resolve this once and for all." The suggestion was logical, but Emily hesitated. Returning to the Harrison mansion, where she'd been cast out years ago, felt almost like surrender. "I don't know, Michael." "Please, Emily," he insisted, taking her hands. "Not for me, but for the boys, for our children." Something in his gaze, a mix of genuine worry and steely resolve, made her relent. "All right, but only temporarily," she finally agreed, "until the police find a way to stop Jessica." That same night, with the help of the community's security guard, Emily and Michael packed essentials for the triplets and herself. They decided to leave at dawn once the boys were rested. Michael didn't return home, staying alert all night, checking the windows and doors repeatedly. The protective stance didn't go unnoticed by Emily, who watched her ex-husband with new eyes. This was no longer the impulsive, immature young man she had known. He was a man finally taking responsibility and fighting to protect his family. The next morning, as they loaded the suitcases into the car, Emily noticed a suspicious movement on the corner. A woman in sunglasses and a hat was watching the house from a distance. "Michael," she called softly, subtly tilting her head toward the observer. He followed her gaze and immediately recognized Jessica. Without hesitation, he handed the car keys to Emily. "Take the boys to the car and lock the doors. I'll handle this." Before Emily could protest, Michael was already striding decisively toward the woman who, upon noticing his approach, tried to hurry away. "Jessica," he called loudly, stopping her in her tracks. "What do you think you're doing?" The woman turned slowly, removing her sunglasses to reveal bloodshot eyes and a disturbing smile. "Hello, Michael. What a coincidence running into you here," she said with artificial calm. "Enough games, Jessica. I know you rented an apartment to spy on us. I know you tried to enter the gated community last night. This ends now." Her smile faded, replaced by a bitter expression. "End? You think you can just throw me away like trash and run back to her?" She pointed accusingly at Emily, who watched tensely from inside the car. "After everything I've done for you?" "What you did was destroy my life with lies," Michael replied, keeping his voice controlled despite his anger. "You manipulated me, drove me away from my family, made me lose precious years with my children." "Children?" she laughed bitterly. "Those boys shouldn't even exist. She got pregnant on purpose to trap you. Can't you see that?" Michael took a deep breath, resisting the urge to react to the provocation. "Jessica, we've already contacted the police and our lawyers. A restraining order is on its way. If you come near my family again, you'll be arrested. This is your last warning." Her eyes burned with uncontrolled fury. "Your family?" she repeated with disdain. "I should have been your family. Me, the one who stood by you when everyone else abandoned you. Me who put up with your moods, your drinking, your self-pity for years. What you did was take advantage of my vulnerability," Michael countered. "But it's over now. I want you to take your things and leave New York City. Today. Otherwise, on top of the restraining order, I'll sue you for every fraud you committed at the company." The mention of lawsuits seemed to finally pierce the fog of obsession clouding Jessica's mind. Her face paled. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Michael challenged, his gaze unwavering. A tense silence settled between them. Finally, Jessica took a step back. "This isn't over, Michael. One day you'll see I was right. She'll hurt you again." "Goodbye, Jessica," he said simply, turning to walk back to the car, where Emily and the triplets waited. As he got in, he found 4 pairs of eyes fixed on him. "Is she leaving?" Emily asked, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I believe so, but either way, we're going to the mansion as planned. I'm not taking any chances." During the drive to the Harrison mansion, the triplets, oblivious to the adults' tension, buzzed with excitement at the prospect of seeing their grandparents' house. "Is it as big as a castle, Dad?" asked Noah, always the most imaginative. "Not quite, champ, but it has a huge garden where you can play," Michael replied, trying to keep his tone light despite his lingering worry. Emily remained silent, lost in thought. The encounter with Jessica had brought back the nightmare they'd lived through years ago. Part of her feared that, despite Michael's threats, the woman wouldn't give up easily. When they arrived at the mansion, they were greeted by Elizabeth and Richard, who were eagerly waiting at the main entrance. The elderly couple's expression upon seeing the triplets step out of the car was pure adoration. "Welcome home, my darlings," said Elizabeth, bending down to hug her grandchildren. "Grandma prepared a special room for you, with all the toys. Boys your age, love." The children's eyes sparkled with excitement as they entered the grand residence. The foyer, with its marble floors and curved staircase, looked like something out of a movie. "It's almost like a real castle, Daddy," exclaimed Ethan, spinning around to take in the grandeur of the place. While the children explored the mansion with their grandparents, Michael pulled Emily into the study to explain the situation to Richard, who still didn't know the details about Jessica. "Did she really follow us here?" asked the patriarch, his face tense with worry after hearing the account. "That woman is dangerous, Michael. We need to take more serious measures." "We're already handling it, Dad," Michael assured him. "The lawyer is at the courthouse right now, getting the restraining order. And I've hired extra security for the mansion and to watch the boys when they go back to school. Richard nodded, satisfied with the precautions but still concerned. And you, Emily, how are you feeling about all this? He asked gently. I'll admit I'm scared, Richard, she confessed. Not so much for myself, but for the boys. I never imagined we'd be in danger. The old businessman stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders with fatherly affection. You're home now, my dear. No one will hurt you or my grandchildren as long as I'm alive. Richard's words, filled with protection and acceptance, touched Emily deeply. It was as if the cycle of rejection that had begun on that fateful night had finally closed. The same house where she'd once been turned away now welcomed her with open arms. The following days settled into a new routine. Emily worked remotely from the mansion's office, while Michael split his time between the company and home, always mindful of the family's safety. The triplets adjusted easily to life in the mansion, fascinated by the vast garden and the constant attention from their grandparents. Elizabeth, in particular, seemed to grow younger with her grandchildren around. Every morning she personally prepared their breakfast, ignoring the housekeeper's protests that it was the staff's job. I've waited too long to spoil my grandchildren, she replied firmly. I won't waste another minute. Richard, too, became inseparable from the triplets, teaching them chess and sharing stories from his own childhood. The bond between grandfather and grandchildren grew stronger each day, bringing new life to the patriarch's heart. A week after moving into the mansion, they received news that the restraining order against Jessica had been granted. Additionally, the private investigator confirmed she had left her rented apartment and seemingly fled the city. Do you think she's really given up? Emily asked Michael as they strolled through the garden after dinner, watching the triplets play with the family dog. I hope so, he answered honestly, but I'm not letting my guard down. We'll keep the extra security for a good while longer. Emily nodded, grateful for his caution. Over the past few days, despite the constant fear of Jessica's threat, she couldn't help but notice how living in the mansion had brought the family closer again. Michael proved to be a caring and patient father, and with each passing day, he seemed more mature and aware of his responsibilities. Your parents are so happy with the boys, she remarked, watching Elizabeth as she joined the children for a game of tag. I've never seen Richard smile so much. They waited a long time for this, Michael replied, following her gaze. When I sent you away, he corrected bitterly, my father was devastated, not just because of his heart condition, but emotionally. He always considered you the daughter he never had. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant laughter of the children and the cheerful barking of the dog. Emily, Michael began hesitantly, as if carefully choosing his words. I don't know if this is the right moment, but these days with you and the kids under the same roof have been the happiest of my life. Her heart raced, aware of where the conversation was heading. Michael, please, let me finish, he asked gently. I know I made unforgivable mistakes. I know I may never fully regain your trust, but I want to try. I want to show you every day for the rest of my life that I'm a different man now. A man who's learned to value what truly matters. Emily looked into the green eyes that had once kept her awake with passion. There was sincerity in them now, and a vulnerability the old Michael would never have allowed himself to show. I'm not asking for us to go back to what we were, he continued. I'm asking for the chance to build something new, something better. For our children, yes, but also for us. Because despite everything, Emily, I never stopped loving you. The confession hung in the air like an unspoken question. Emily felt torn between her heart, which was beginning to open again, and her mind, warning her against the possibility of more pain. I need time, Michael, she finally replied. These days have been different, special in their own way. But there's so much history between us, so much hurt that still needs to heal completely. He nodded, respecting her hesitation. Take all the time you need. I won't pressure you or demand anything. I just want the chance to prove, day by day, that I deserve a place in your life and in your heart. Before Emily could respond, they were interrupted by the triplets running toward them, breathless and smiling after playing with their grandmother. Mom, Dad, Grandma said there's ice cream for dessert. announced Ethan, always the trio's spokesperson. "And we can eat it on the porch while we watch the stars," added Noah, his eyes shining with excitement. "Only if you take a bath first," Emily said, smiling at her children's enthusiasm. "I'll help with bath time," Michael offered quickly. As the four of them headed inside, Emily couldn't help but reflect on how life took unexpected turns. 4 years ago, she had left that same mansion with a shattered heart and only a suitcase in hand. Now she was back, not as the insecure young wife, but as a strong, independent woman, a successful business owner, and most importantly, the mother of 3 boys who brought joy to everyone. The future with Michael was still uncertain, a possibility. Her heart was beginning to consider cautiously. But one thing was certain: she would never again let anyone dictate her worth or her place in the world. That lesson, learned through pain and rebirth, was the most precious legacy she intended to leave her children. Their days at the Harrison mansion turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. As time passed, the initial fear of Jessica's threat gradually faded, replaced by a family routine that, to Emily's surprise, felt increasingly natural and comforting. The triplets had adjusted perfectly to their new reality. The expansive garden of the mansion had become their private playground, with toys strategically scattered by Richard, who spared no effort to please his grandchildren. Elizabeth, in turn, had enthusiastically taken on the role of the doting grandmother, documenting every moment with photos and videos that soon adorned the once austere walls of the mansion. "I've never seen my parents so happy," Michael remarked one morning as he sipped coffee on the terrace with Emily, watching Richard teach the boys to ride their bikes. "It's like they've grown 10 years younger." Emily smiled, silently, agreeing it was true. The weariness she'd seen on Richard's face the day of the meeting at the lawyer's office had completely vanished. The man now running across the garden, steadying Oliver's bike, radiated life and energy. "They deserve this," she finally replied. "They've always been good to me, even in the hardest times." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Both knew she was referring to that fateful night when Michael had unjustly sent her away. The painful past was still there, like a scar that no longer hurt, but would never fully fade. Yet, living daily under the same roof had worked wonders in healing old wounds. Michael had been consistently attentive and respectful, never pushing Emily for more than she was willing to give. His patience and dedication to the children impressed everyone, especially Elizabeth, who often remarked on her son's transformation. "He was never like this before, not even when you two were newlyweds," she confided to Emily one afternoon as they baked a cake together for the triplets' snack. "He was impatient, consumed by work. Now it's as if nothing matters more than those children and you." Emily blushed slightly at the last remark. She couldn't deny that in recent weeks, her heart had begun to soften toward Michael. Small daily gestures, the coffee he brought her in the morning just how she liked it, the encouraging notes he left on her laptop before important meetings, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't noticing, all conspired to break down the walls she'd built around her heart. Professionally, the merger between their companies was proving increasingly promising. Triple Stars was expanding internationally, leveraging the global structure of the Harrison Group, while the luxury dealerships experienced a revival, with dedicated family-friendly spaces inspired by Emily's products. William Foster, who had initially planned to remain a silent investor, was becoming more involved in the day-to-day business, finding in Michael the son he never had, and in Emily the spiritual heir to his late daughter. "The two of you together are unstoppable," the old businessman declared during a board meeting. Michael's business instincts combined with Emily's innovation and sensitivity, it's the perfect formula for success. The comment didn't go unnoticed, and meaningful glances were exchanged. Everyone had observed the gradual reconciliation between the former spouses, despite their efforts to maintain a strictly professional facade in public. One evening, after putting the triplets to bed, Emily found Michael in the mansion's office, hunched over financial reports with a worried expression. "Still working?" she asked, stepping in quietly and settling into the armchair near the desk. He looked up, surprised and visibly pleased by the unexpected visit. Just checking some numbers from the Los Angeles branch, he replied, pushing the papers aside. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. How are the boys? Asleep the moment I finished the story, she smiled. 3 identical little angels, though Ethan still insists on sleeping with that huge stuffed dinosaur you gave him. Michael smiled, remembering the day he'd bought the toy. It had been during their first outing alone with the children after the paternity revelation. Ethan had instantly fallen in love with the green Tyrannosaurus that was bigger than himself, and Michael hadn't been able to resist his son's pleading eyes. "I've been wondering," Emily began hesitantly, interrupting his reminiscing. "Isn't it time we went back home? It's been almost 3 months since the incident with Jessica, and there's been no sign of her since." The question caught Michael off guard. Part of him had feared this moment, when Emily would decide it was time to resume her independent life, taking the boys back to the apartment. It would mean the end of the family life he had come to cherish so much. "Do you think it's safe?" he asked, trying to mask his apprehension. The detective confirmed she left the country. "Apparently she's living in Canada now," Emily replied. "And the restraining order still stands if she returns. We can't live in fear forever, Michael." He nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in her words. "You're right, as always," he conceded, forcing a smile. "If you want, I can arrange the move for the end of the week." Emily studied him for a moment, noticing the poorly concealed sadness in his eyes. "The boys will miss it here," she said softly. "The garden, the dog, their grandparents. And you, of course." "I'll visit them every day," he promised quickly. "Nothing will change in that regard. I'll still be present in their lives." A comfortable silence settled between them, as Emily seemed to consider something important. "What if," she began, taking a deep breath before continuing, "what if you came with us?" The suggestion hung in the air like a soap bubble, delicate and shimmering. Michael stared at her, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "You mean, there's a guest room in the apartment," she clarified quickly, blushing slightly. "We could try a temporary arrangement to see how it works. For the boys." For the boys. The caveat was clear, yet Michael felt his heart race with renewed hope. It was the first time Emily had taken a concrete step toward possible reconciliation. "I'd love to," he replied simply, afraid that any excessive enthusiasm might make her retreat. "Good," she nodded, standing up as if the conversation had suddenly made her uncomfortable. "Good night, Michael." "Good night, Emily," he answered, watching her leave the office with light steps. When the door closed, Michael allowed himself a broad smile. A guest room wasn't exactly what he'd dreamed of, but it was a start. A far more promising start than he'd ever dared hope for. The news of the move was met with loud protests from the Triplets, who couldn't understand why they had to leave the castle house, as they called the mansion. Richard and Elizabeth's sadness was also evident, though they both understood the family's need to regain their independence. "You'll come visit us every Sunday for lunch, won't you?" Elizabeth insisted as she helped Emily pack the children's belongings. "And during school breaks, the boys can stay with us for a few weeks." "Of course, Elizabeth," Emily assured her, touched by her former mother-in-law's genuine love for her grandchildren. This will always be their home too. The revelation that Michael would be joining them in the move brought visible relief to the older couple. "It's about time you two tried again," Richard told his son bluntly. "Don't waste this second chance. Michael, men like us rarely get the privilege of rebuilding what we've destroyed." The father's words, though harsh, held the accumulated wisdom of decades of life and his own mistakes. Michael merely nodded, deeply aware of the responsibility. In his hands, the move happened on a sunny Friday. Emily's apartment, though spacious by New York City standards, felt cramped after the expanse of the mansion. The triplets ran from room to room, rediscovering their old toys and staking out new territories. "Daddy's sleeping here?" asked Oliver, the most observant, noticing Michael's suitcase being taken to the guest room. "Yes, for now," Emily replied cautiously. "Daddy's going to live with us for a while." "Forever?" pressed Noah, always the most sensitive to emotional dynamics. Michael and Emily exchanged uncertain glances. "We'll see how it goes, sweetheart," she answered diplomatically. "The important thing is, we'll all be together as a family." The word family warmed Michael's heart. It was all he truly wanted, to be a real family again, to mend past mistakes, to build a future based on trust and mutual respect. The first weeks of living together in the apartment were an adjustment for everyone. Establishing a new routine, dividing responsibilities, negotiating space, it all required patience and constant communication. Michael worked hard to adapt to his role as a full-time father, helping with breakfast, taking the boys to school, pitching in with chores without Emily having to ask. His willingness to take on his share without hesitation impressed her daily. She remembered the Michael from before, who had considered housework women's work and rarely involved himself in the practical aspects of their life together. The man who now made dinner while she finished an important video call was almost unrecognizable. One night, about a month after the move, Emily found Michael asleep on the living room couch, a children's book open on his chest, and Ethan curled up beside him, also asleep. The scene was so sweet and natural that tears welled in her eyes. Carefully, so as not to wake them, she draped a light blanket over them both. As she did, her fingers accidentally brushed Michael's face, and he stirred at the gentle touch. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you," she whispered, stepping back slightly. "It's fine," he murmured, still drowsy. "Guess we lost track of time during the story." Their eyes met in the dim light of the room, illuminated only by the nearby lamp. There was something about that moment, the quiet of the night, their sleeping son between them, the simple, perfect domesticity of it all that seemed to suspend time and erase all past hurts. Without thinking, Emily leaned in and pressed a light kiss to Michael's lips. It was brief, almost chaste, but full of meaning. Before he could react, she pulled away, visibly flustered by her own impulse. "I'll put the other two to bed," she said quickly, standing. "Can you take Ethan?" Michael, still dazed by the surprise of the unexpected kiss, simply nodded, watching her hurry from the room. Carefully, so as not to wake his son, he stood and carried him to the room the triplets shared. After settling Ethan into bed, he found Emily in the hallway, quietly closing the bedroom door after checking on the other two. "They're all asleep," she said softly, avoiding his gaze. "Good night, Michael." Before she could walk away, he gently caught her wrist. "Emily, about what just happened?" "It was a silly impulse," she interrupted, still not looking at him. "We don't have to make it a big deal." "What if I want to?" he asked softly, stepping closer. "What if I told you I've been dreaming of this moment for months?" Finally, she lifted her eyes to meet his, and what she saw there, desire, hope, vulnerability, made her heart race. "Michael, she began, but the words felt inadequate to express the storm of emotions inside her. "We don't have to decide anything right now," he assured her, sensing her hesitation. "We can keep going as we are, taking it one step at a time. I just want you to know that for me that kiss meant everything." The sincerity in his words touched something deep within Emily. After so long protecting her heart, building walls around her emotions, she suddenly felt vulnerable and exposed. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. "Good night, Michael," she repeated finally, but this time with a small smile that held an unspoken promise. He smiled back, understanding what went unsaid. "Good night, Emily." In the days that followed, something subtle yet undeniable had shifted between them. Brief touches as they passed each other in the kitchen, lingering glances during work meetings, knowing smiles as they watched the children play. These were signs of a reconnection blossoming naturally, without rush or pressure. The triplets, with the sharp perception of children, noticed the change in the air. "You like Daddy again, don't you, Mummy?" Noah asked one afternoon as Emily helped him with his homework. The direct question caught her off guard. "Daddy and I have always respected each other, sweetheart," she replied diplomatically. "No, I mean really like him," the boy insisted, "like in the movies with kisses and everything." Emily felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Things between adults are complicated, Noah," she tried to explain. "Sometimes people need time to—" "I saw you kissing in the living room the other night," he interrupted with the blunt honesty of a 4-year-old. "It was small, But it was a kiss. Ethan. I was asleep, but I saw it. The revelation left Emily momentarily speechless. She had thought all the boys were asleep that night. Did it make you happy? She finally asked, deciding to be honest with her son. Noah grinned, revealing a dimple identical to his father's. So happy. All my friends at school live with their mom and dad together. Now I do too. The simplicity of a child's logic touched Emily deeply. To Noah, it was all so clear. Parents should be together, forming a complete family. The complexities of adult relationships, past hurts, fears, and insecurities, none of it mattered in the pure perspective of a child. That night, after the triplets had fallen asleep, Emily found Michael on the apartment balcony, gazing at the city lights with a glass of red wine. Mind if I join you? She asked, nodding to the empty chair beside him. Always, he replied, already pouring her a glass. For a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the view and each other's company. It was Emily who finally broke the quiet. Noah saw us that night. The kiss. Michael nearly choked on his wine. What? I thought he was asleep. With his brothers. Apparently not, she smiled, remembering the conversation with her son. He's very happy about the idea of us being together again. Says now he's just like his friends at school. Michael set his glass down, studying Emily's face carefully. And you? How do you feel about that idea? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Emily took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before answering. I'm scared, Michael, she admitted finally. Not just of getting hurt again, but of hurting the boys. They've grown so attached to the family dynamic we've built. If things don't work out between us, they will, he assured her, with a conviction that surprised her. Not because I'm naive or presumptuous, but because I've never wanted something to work out so badly in my entire life. These months together have shown me what truly matters, Emily. It's not money or status or the empire my father built. It's you, it's our children, it's the family we've made. The intensity in his words was palpable. Emily could feel the sincerity radiating from every syllable, every glance. How can I be sure we won't fall back into the same patterns? She asked, voicing her greatest fear. The jealousy, the distrust, the wrong priorities. We can't be absolutely certain of anything in life, he answered honestly, but I can promise I'll work every day to be a better man, a better partner. And if you ever notice me slipping back into old habits, I want you to tell me right away. No secrets, no letting small resentments pile up. Total and honest communication, always. The proposal was simple, yet revolutionary for them. In the past, both had avoided confrontations, swallowed dissatisfaction, allowed small grievances to grow into insurmountable walls. Emily reached out, intertwining her fingers with Michael's in a silent gesture of acceptance. One day at a time, she proposed. No grand promises, no unrealistic expectations, just two adults trying to build something better than what we had before. Sounds perfect to me, he agreed, lifting her hand to his lips for a tender kiss. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It means so much to us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The following weeks brought a new lightness to the apartment. Michael gradually moved more of his belongings from the guest room to the master bedroom, though the couple kept this development discreet around the children. The triplets, however, weren't easily fooled. Why are Daddy's clothes in your closet, Mummy? Oliver asked one morning while searching for a jacket in Emily's room. Because, well, she stammered, caught off guard. Because Mommy and I decided we really like each other again, Michael interjected, stepping into the room just then. Like when we first met, before you were born. The simple explanation seemed to satisfy their young observer, who nodded solemnly before leaving. Minutes later, the three brothers were animatedly discussing the news in the hallway. I think they approve, Michael remarked, embracing Emily from behind as they watched the boys through the slightly open door. Seems like it, she agreed, relaxing against his chest. But we still need to talk about making this official. Legally, we're still divorced, you know. The mention of their legal status surprised Michael. It was the first time Emily had broached the possibility of formalizing their reconciliation. "Are you suggesting what I think you are?" he asked cautiously, turning her to face him. "I'm suggesting we need to decide our next step," she replied, holding his gaze. "The boys will start asking more specific questions soon. We need clear answers." Michael took a deep breath, gathering courage for the question he'd been rehearsing for weeks. "What if we got married again?" he finally proposed. "Not just for the boys or convenience, but because I love you, Emily. I never stopped loving you, even when I was blinded by anger and manipulation." The declaration, though expected, still made Emily's heart race. It was strange how, after everything they'd been through, those three simple words, "I love you," still held such power. "We would need a very detailed prenuptial agreement. This time," she replied with a mischievous smile, lightening the moment with humor, "especially considering I'm now the one with more to lose financially." Michael threw his head back, laughing with genuine amusement. "Fair enough," he agreed, pulling her closer. "We can have all the contracts and safeguards you want. What matters is that we're together, officially and forever this time." "Forever is a long time," she teased, though her eyes sparkled with emotion. "Not long enough when it comes to you," he countered, sealing the promise with a kiss. The news of the engagement, or re-engagement as their friends joked, was met with joy by family and close friends. Elizabeth and Richard were over the moon, celebrating not only their son's reconciliation with the daughter-in-law they had always loved, but also the possibility of having the whole family together again under one roof. "You should renew your vows at the mansion," Elizabeth suggested enthusiastically during a Sunday lunch. "In the garden with the boys as ring-bearers. It would be perfect." Michael looked at Emily, leaving the decision entirely in her hands. He knew the mansion held mixed memories for her, some wonderful, others painful. To his surprise, Emily smiled and nodded. "I think it would be fitting," she agreed, closing one chapter and starting another in the same place, but as different people, stronger and wiser. The preparations for the ceremony, scheduled for 2 months later, brought renewed energy to the family. The triplets, now almost 5, were thrilled with their starring roles in the event. Richard personally oversaw the garden's renovation, while Elizabeth coordinated with decorators and vendors, determined to create the perfect celebration. The only one to express reservations was William Foster. During a private meeting with Emily, the seasoned businessman voiced his concern. "Are you sure you're ready for this, my dear?" he asked, studying her with his sharp eyes. "Forgiving is one thing, but trusting again, that takes rare courage." "I'm sure, William," she replied with conviction. "Over the past few months, I've seen a Michael completely different from the man who threw me out years ago. People can change when faced with the consequences of their mistakes. He has changed." The businessman studied her for a moment before nodding, seemingly satisfied with what he saw in her eyes. "In that case, I have a wedding gift for you," he announced, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "Today I signed over 10% of my shares in the holding company to the Triplets, a trust fund they can access at 25. Emily stared at him, stunned. "William, this is incredibly generous, but—" "No but," he interrupted gently. "I have no heirs, you know that. Those boys are the closest to grandchildren I'll ever have. Besides, it's an investment in the company's future. One day they'll take over the business we're building now." Moved, Emily hugged the mentor who had become like a father to her in recent years. "Thank you," she whispered, fighting back tears, "for everything." As the ceremony date approached, a sense of unease began to unsettle Emily. It wasn't doubt about her decision to remarry Michael, but a vague, almost superstitious fear that something might ruin their newfound happiness. "Everything okay?" Michael asked one evening, noticing her distant gaze as they reviewed the final party details. "Yes, just—" she hesitated, unsure how to explain. "Sometimes I'm afraid it's too good to be true. Like fate is just giving us a break before throwing another challenge our way." He wrapped his arms around her, understanding her apprehension. "Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together this time," he promised, kissing the top of her head. "Nothing will separate us again." On the eve of the ceremony, the Harrison mansion had transformed into a fairy tale setting. Delicate lights, hung from the garden trees, creating a magical atmosphere. Elegantly decorated tables were scattered across the lawn, waiting for the next day's guests. At the center, an improvised altar adorned with white flowers and sheer fabrics marked the spot where vows would be renewed. Following tradition, Michael spent the night at a friend's house, while Emily and the triplets remained at the mansion with Elizabeth and Richard. The children's excitement for the big day made dinner a lively occasion, with the boys asking endless questions about how the ceremony would go. "And after the party, will we keep living in the apartment or move back here?" asked Oliver, always practical in his concerns. "In the apartment, sweetheart," Emily replied, "but we'll visit Grandma and Grandpa every weekend like always." "One day this house will be yours," Richard added, winking at his grandson, "when your father and I are too old to take care of it." The idea seemed to please the little boy, who nodded solemnly before turning his attention back to dessert. After putting the boys to bed, Emily took one last walk through the garden, admiring the preparations and soaking in the night's tranquility. She sat on one of the benches strategically placed among fragrant rose bushes, allowing herself a moment of quiet reflection. The path that had brought her here had been long and arduous. From the frightened young woman who had left this very mansion with only a suitcase of clothes, to the successful businesswoman and confident mother, she was now every step, every challenge had shaped the woman she had become. Her thoughts were interrupted by Elizabeth, who approached quietly with 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast to the bride-to-be," her future mother-in-law smiled, handing her one of the glasses. "Thank you, Elizabeth," Emily replied, accepting the drink. "For everything, not just this beautiful celebration, but for never giving up on me, even when things seemed impossible." The older woman sat beside her, her eyes glistening with emotion in the moonlight. "I need to confess something, my dear," she said after a brief hesitation. "During those years you were away, I knew where you were." Emily stared at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I hired a private detective to find you right after Michael sent you away," Elizabeth explained. "I didn't tell anyone, not even Richard. I just wanted to make sure you were safe, that you didn't need help." "It was you who sent the money when the boys were in the ICU," Emily concluded, the pieces finally falling into place. Elizabeth nodded, confirming her suspicion. "I couldn't do much without raising suspicions, but I did what I could. I followed your progress, your struggles, your rise. I was so proud of you even from afar." Silent tears streamed down Emily's face as she processed the revelation. "Why didn't you reach out to me directly?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I respected your decision to leave," Elizabeth answered honestly. "You needed that time to find yourself, to build your own strength away from our family. If I had interfered, you might never have discovered what you were truly capable of." The wisdom in the older woman's words struck Emily deeply. Elizabeth was right. Those years of forced independence, despite all the hardships, had been essential to her growth. "Do you know what makes me proudest of you?" Elizabeth continued, gently wiping the tears from Emily's face. "The fact that, even when you were hurting, you never kept my grandsons from knowing about us. You could have fed resentment in them, could have painted Michael as the villain of the story, but you chose the nobler path." "I couldn't deprive the boys of their family," Emily replied simply. "They deserve to know their roots, to understand where they came from." The 2 women remained silent for a few minutes, sharing a moment of deep connection under the starry sky. "We should sleep," Elizabeth suggested finally. "Tomorrow will be a big day." "I'll be there in a minute," Emily promised. "I just want to enjoy this peace a little longer." After Elizabeth left, Emily allowed herself a few more moments of contemplative solitude. Her mother-in-law's confession had touched something deep in her heart, a sense of belonging, of continuity, of family in the truest and broadest sense of the word. As she walked back to the house, her phone buzzed with a message. It was Michael. "I can't sleep thinking about you and tomorrow. I can't wait to start our new life together. I love you more than yesterday, but less than tomorrow." A smile lit up her face as she typed her reply. "I can't sleep either, thinking about everything we've been through to get here. It was worth it. See you at the altar. I love you." The morning of the ceremony dawned perfectly sunny, as if the heavens themselves were blessing the renewed union. The mansion buzzed with activity from early on. Florists putting the final touches on arrangements, the catering team organizing the kitchen, musicians tuning their instruments. In the master bedroom, now transformed into an impromptu beauty salon, Emily was surrounded by her makeup artist, hairstylist, and of course the triplets, who insisted on staying glued to their mother despite the nanny's efforts to distract them. "You look beautiful, Mommy," Noah exclaimed, watching her with admiration as the makeup artist applied the finishing touches. "Like a real princess," agreed Ethan, always the most effusive. "Daddy won't be able to speak," added Oliver, with his usual perceptiveness. Emily smiled at her sons, her heart overflowing with love. Dressed in matching navy blue suits, bow ties, and neatly combed hair, the three looked like little gentlemen. "And you all look as handsome as princes," she replied, adjusting Noah's bow tie, which was already coming loose. "The most handsome princes this queen could ever wish for." The sound of soft applause interrupted the moment. Elizabeth and Mrs. Wilson stood at the bedroom door, watching the scene with emotional smiles. "Hey, it's time to get dressed, my dear," Elizabeth announced, checking her watch. "The guests will start arriving in an hour." With the help of the two women who represented maternal figures in her life, Emily prepared for the big moment. The dress, unlike the traditional white of her first wedding, was an elegant champagne-colored design that highlighted her golden skin and blonde hair. Simple yet sophisticated, it perfectly reflected the woman she had become, confident, mature, aware of her worth. When she was finally ready, the triplets gasped in simultaneous admiration. Even Richard, who had come to fetch his grandsons and brief them on their roles in the ceremony, seemed momentarily speechless. "My daughter," the patriarch finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "You look splendid." The term of endearment, "my daughter," touched Emily deeply. It wasn't just an expression of affection. It was an acknowledgement of her rightful place in the family, not just as the mother of his grandsons, but as an intrinsically valued member of the Harrison clan. From the garden came the sounds of voices and soft music, signaling the arrival of the first guests. The triplets were taken by Richard for their final instructions, while Elizabeth and Mrs. Wilson went downstairs to help welcome the early arrivals. Alone for a moment, Emily Harrison approached the window that offered a privileged view of the garden. From her vantage point, she could see Michael Harrison arriving, elegant in his dark suit, greeting guests with a radiant smile. Even from a distance, his genuine joy was palpable. A light knock on the door interrupted her contemplation. It was William Foster, impeccable in his grey suit, holding a small velvet case. "May I come in?" the businessman asked. "Of course, William," she smiled, genuinely happy to see her mentor. "I brought something for you," he said, extending the case, "a little gift to complete your look." Intrigued, Emily opened the box, revealing a delicate set of sapphire and diamond earrings and necklace. "William, this is," she stammered, impressed by the beauty of the jewels. "It belonged to my wife," he explained with a melancholic smile, "and before that to my mother. They're antique family stones. My daughter would have worn them on her wedding day had she lived long enough." The revelation made Emily swallow hard, moved by the depth of the gesture. "I can't accept something so precious," she protested softly. "You can, and you should," he insisted. "Sapphires symbolize loyalty and faithfulness. Perfect for the new beginning you and Michael are building today. Besides," he added with a mischievous smile, "something blue brings the bride luck, isn't that what they say?" Wordless with gratitude, Emily simply hugged the older businessman, who returned the embrace with equal warmth. "If you'll allow." "Show me the honor," William said as they parted. "I'd like to escort you down the aisle. I know traditionally it's the father's role, but—" "It would be an honor, William," Emily interrupted, understanding what this request meant to a man who had lost his only daughter. "I can't imagine anyone more fitting." With his help, she put on the jewels, which complemented her dress perfectly. Her reflection in the mirror showed not just a radiant bride, but a woman who had traveled a long path of self-discovery and resilience. "They're playing the music for your entrance," William observed, offering his arm. "Are you ready?" Emily took a deep breath, feeling a quiet certainty settle in her heart. "More than ever," she replied, accepting his arm. The descent down the mansion's staircase felt like a dream in slow motion. Guests waiting at the main entrance turned to admire her, murmurs of approval following her steps. As she reached the stair leading to the garden, she saw her 3 little treasures waiting, each holding a small pillow with symbolic rings and bands. "Mommy looks beautiful," Ethan announced loudly, breaking protocol and drawing affectionate laughter from the crowd. The garden had been transformed. The central aisle, lined with chairs filled by friends and family, led to a small gazebo decorated with white and green flowers, where Michael stood with an expression that blended admiration and pure happiness. To the sound of a soft instrumental version of "A Thousand Years," Emily walked slowly down the aisle, preceded by the triplets who, with surprising discipline, kept their steps synchronized just as they'd rehearsed. When she finally reached the altar, William formally placed her hand in Michael's, symbolizing the union of 2 families that had become one through the bonds forged by the triplets. The ceremony was simple and moving. Instead of the traditional, "Till death do us part," the couple chose personalized vows that acknowledged both the hardships of the past and the promises for the future. "Emily," Michael began, his voice steady despite the evident emotion, "when I met you, I thought I knew what love was. When I lost you, I learned what regret was. And when I found you again, I discovered what true gratitude is. I promise to honor this second chance every day of my life, to be the man you and our children deserve, and never again let pride or insecurity come between us." Silent tears streamed down Emily's face as she absorbed the heartfelt words. "Michael," she replied when it was her turn, "our story didn't begin as a fairy tale, nor did it follow the path we had planned. But every detour, every obstacle brought us here, stronger, wiser, and more determined to build something lasting. I promise to share with you not only the moments of joy, but also the challenges, knowing that together we are stronger than apart. I promise to always remember that true love isn't perfect. It's patient, resilient, and capable of forgiveness." As the vows ended, the triplets approached with the rings. Their small hands delivered the symbols of commitment, and when Michael slid the ring onto Emily's finger, it seemed to seal not just a promise, but the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, more mature, more mindful, and infinitely stronger. "You may kiss the bride," announced the officiant, prompting enthusiastic applause from the guests. The kiss that sealed their renewed union was both tender and profound, carrying within it the full story of a love that had survived the worst storms and emerged stronger on the other side. The celebration that followed was filled with moments of genuine joy. The triplets, freed from formalities after the ceremony, ran through the garden with the other children, occasionally returning for hugs and kisses from their parents and grandparents. Elizabeth and Richard, beaming, accepted congratulations as if they were the newlyweds themselves. So great was their happiness at seeing the family reunited. During the reception, William Foster called for everyone's attention for a special announcement. "Friends, family, honored guests," the businessman began, raising his glass. "As many of you know, I'm nearing the end of my professional journey. At 75, it's time to pass the torch to those with the energy and vision for the future. That's why I'm pleased to announce that, starting today, Emily and Michael Harrison will be the new co-chairs of the board for the holding company we built together." The revelation was met with surprised applause. Even the couple had been unaware of William's decision. Triple Stars and the Harrison Group, united under one leadership, represent the future I envisioned when I proposed this partnership, he continued. A future where innovation and tradition walk hand in hand, where the complementary talents of these 2 extraordinary entrepreneurs can fully flourish. Michael and Emily exchanged stunned but deeply moved glances. It was a vote of confidence that went beyond business, acknowledging their personal journey of overcoming and reconciliation. As the afternoon faded and the sun cast a golden glow over the garden, Michael found Emily in a quiet moment, watching the triplets play with their newly discovered cousins. "Happy?" he asked, embracing her from behind. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she replied, leaning against his chest. If someone had told me 4 years ago we'd be here today, I would have laughed in disbelief. Life has a peculiar sense of humor, he mused, watching their children. Who would have thought my biggest mistake would end up bringing me my greatest happiness? Emily turned to face him, gently touching his cheek. It wasn't your mistake that brought us here, Michael. It was our ability to grow through the pain, to learn from our missteps, to truly forgive. He nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her words. You know what amazes me most about you? He asked, kissing her palm. Your strength, not just to survive what you've been through, but to turn adversity into success, hurt into compassion. Emily smiled, feeling in her chest that quiet certainty that only comes when we're exactly where we should be, beside the person we should be with. Our children have that same strength, she remarked, turning her gaze to the triplets. I see in each of them a determination that will take them far. As long as we're by their side, guiding the way, Michael added. Always, she promised, sealing the commitment with a kiss. The moment was interrupted by their children, who came running toward them, full of energy and urgent demands for parental attention. Mom, Dad, Grandpa Richard said we're all going on a vacation together, Ethan announced, jumping with excitement. To the beach, Noah added, just as thrilled. In a big house with a pool, Oliver finished, not wanting to be left out. Emily and Michael exchanged amused glances. Apparently, the grandparents were already planning the next chapters of the family reunion. That sounds wonderful, Emily agreed, bending down to hug all three. But now how about you go say goodbye to the guests who are leaving? As hosts, we need to thank everyone for coming. Taking their important mission seriously, the triplets ran back to the party, leaving their parents with a brief moment of privacy. I'm looking forward to the honeymoon, Michael said with a suggestive smile. 2 weeks, just the two of us in that village in Napa Valley. I'll miss the boys, Emily admitted. We've never been apart for so long. They'll be fine with your parents and mine, Michael assured her, and we deserve this time together to reconnect completely, without distractions. She nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his words. Despite all the closeness of the past few months, there were still aspects of intimacy that needed rebuilding, trust that needed to be solidified away from the watchful eyes of family and daily responsibilities. As the sun fully set, the lights scattered across the garden turned on automatically, creating a magical and cozy atmosphere. The last guests began saying their goodbyes, leaving only family and closest friends for the intimate dinner that would conclude the celebrations. Before joining the group for dinner, Michael pulled Emily aside to a quiet corner of the garden. I have a gift for you, he said, taking a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Something that might help complete the healing process for all of us. Curious, Emily opened the envelope, finding legal documents she couldn't fully understand. At first glance, what is this? The deed to the house where you grew up in Connecticut, he explained. I bought it back for your parents. I know how hard it was for them to sell it, to help with medical expenses after the accident. Tears instantly welled up in Emily's eyes. The house from her childhood, sold when her parents faced financial struggles after a serious car accident, had been a significant loss for the whole family. It was a gesture that touched deep and precious memories. How did you find out about this? She asked, moved. Your mother mentioned it casually during one of our video calls with the boys, Michael explained. I realized how much it meant to her, to your whole family. Your parents get the keys tomorrow when they return from their trip. Without enough words to express her gratitude, Emily simply hugged him tightly, letting her tears say what words couldn't. Thank you, she whispered at last, for understanding what really matters. The intimate moment was interrupted by Elizabeth, who was looking for them for dinner. Oh, there you are, the matriarch exclaimed. Dinner will be served in 5 minutes. And the triplets are exhausted, poor things. I think all the excitement of the day finally caught up with them. Hand in hand, the couple followed Elizabeth to the elegantly set table in the covered garden area. The triplets, despite their visible exhaustion, bravely fought to stay awake, determined not to miss a single moment of the celebration. The dinner was marked by heartfelt speeches, shared memories, and excited plans for the future. Richard, overcoming his usual reserve, offered a touching toast that perfectly summarized the family's journey. To resilience, which allows us to bend without breaking. To forgiveness, which frees not only the one who receives it, but especially the one who offers it. And to love, which, even when tested by the strongest winds, can bloom again if its roots are true and deep. Michael and Emily, may your renewed union be stronger than before, fertilized by the tears shed and illuminated by the wisdom gained. When the last dishes were cleared and the triplets finally succumbed to sleep, carried to their room by Elizabeth and Richard, Michael and Emily found themselves alone once more in the garden, beneath the starry sky that had witnessed their reconciliation. "I think it's time to go up," Michael suggested, noticing the weariness beginning to show in his wife's eyes. "It's been a long and emotional day." "A perfect day," she corrected, smiling. "The first of many in our new life." Hand in hand, they walked back to the mansion, no longer as visitors or guests, but as an integral part of the family that lived there. The journey had not been easy nor straightforward. There had been detours, dead ends, and seemingly insurmountable mountains. But every step, even the painful ones, had led them precisely where they were meant to be, together, stronger, ready to write the next chapters of their story. As they climbed the stairs toward their bedroom, now freshly renovated and prepared especially for them, Emily couldn't help but contrast this moment with that rainy night 4 years earlier, when she had descended those same stairs with a suitcase in hand and a shattered heart. Life truly took unexpected turns, and sometimes, just sometimes, those turns led us exactly where we needed to be. Wiser, stronger, and infinitely more grateful for the journey, no matter how rocky it had been. That night, as she fell asleep in Michael's arms, Emily finally felt at home. Not just because of the physical location or the walls surrounding them, but because of the sense of wholeness that only true love, tested and strengthened by time, could provide. And as the couple slept, the triplets dreamed in their room, identical smiles on identical faces, as if even in their dreams they were celebrating their parents' restored union and the promise of a bright future for the family that, against all odds, had rebuilt itself from the ashes of pain and disillusionment. The end. Did you see how a family rebuilt itself despite the wounds? Share with us what touched your heart most in this journey of forgiveness and new beginnings. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe for more stories that move and inspire.